The marathon is a different kind of race. A 42-kilometer run that only 0.1% of the population completes. A run that consists of putting your body through the ringer until you cross the finish line. And the crazy part is that every single year, over 1 million people pay their hard-earned money to sign up for these races. So does that mean that everybody who runs a marathon is crazy? To run 42 kilometers, I'd say there's a little crazy in all of us. But to us, it's so much more than just a race. It's a display of hard work, determination, and resilience. This marathon truly wasn't about the finish line. It was about pushing my limits and achieving what I knew I was capable of. The marathon tells a story of every step you take along the way. The mornings when you were tired and didn't want to get up and run, or the times when you had so many things going on in life and running was the last thing that you wanted to do, but you still went out and did it. We as human beings are capable of more than anything we could ever imagine. And on October 20th, I ran the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. And here's how it went. 16 weeks, almost 1,000 kilometers later, and we've arrived at race day. As I'm talking to you guys, it's currently 5:19 in the morning, and I did not sleep well very last night. I got in bed probably around 9:30 and didn't fall asleep until 11:30, 12-ish. There was just too many thoughts going through my head, but I'm here. I just got out of the shower. I feel so much better. Let me show you guys the race day fit. So on my head, I'm going to be wearing this white CL hat. I just got it off Amazon like a week ago. It's super light and breathable. And then of course we have the shirt with my bib on it. 2546. This is probably, I mentioned this in my last video, this is the nicest bib that I've ever gotten. This singlet here is also from the running room, also very light and breathable, goes nicely with my hat. And if you guys know me, you would know that I always run in the Gymshark 5-inch shorts. They're so comfortable and they're pretty cheap as well. For breakfast, I'm having overnight oats, and then I have 3 scoops of my PVL electrolytes. It's gonna be so salty, but you gotta do what you gotta do. And then over here, I have my race day shoes. I'm gonna be wearing the Nike Vaporfly 3s. I have my belt that contains 5 gels. I'm gonna be using the Science and Sport gels. These things are packed tightly in here. Like if I squeeze this too hard, they might blow up. I got to the race at about 7 a.m. and the red corral that I was in was scheduled to start at 8 a.m. And when I got down there, it was packed. There were so many people already. They were trying to set up the corrals, and keep in mind that this is my first ever marathon. So seeing all these just swarms of people increased my nerves even more. Thankfully, I was able to find a little alleyway where I could do some warm-ups, so I stretched out my hamstrings, my hip flexors, and I also ran a kilometer. After warming up, it was about 7:30, so still not time to get into the corrals, and I had a few other friends who were doing the race. One was also doing the full marathon, a couple others were doing the half marathon, and we were all texting each other, trying to meet up, but it was nearly impossible to find anyone down there. Thankfully, I did run into my friend Alex. You know, we kind of gave each other a big ol' bro hug before the race. I gave my parents a hug before the race, and just like that, it was time to hop into the corrals. And this is when the nerves really started to kick in. It finally hit me that in a few moments, I was gonna run my first ever marathon. My first ever 42 kilometers. And I don't even know how to describe to you guys how I was feeling in that moment. It was kind of everything from excited to anxious to overwhelmed to proud of myself for even getting to that point. When I first started running, if you would have told me that I would have ever signed up for a marathon, I would have said you're insane. But here I was in Toronto on a Sunday morning, getting ready to run 42 kilometers. The one thing that you hear from people who have done marathons before is don't go out too fast, don't go out too fast, don't go out too fast. It's a long race. And I did just that. Like, I paced myself pretty well at the beginning. I started out at around 440 per kilometer through the first 5K. I just wanted to settle into a rhythm. I wanted to keep my heart rate in check and let the nerves kind of calm themselves down. There's almost nothing that compares to the atmosphere on race day, seeing all of the other runners around you, knowing that they've trained just as hard as you have for this very moment, seeing everybody in the crowd with their signs, with their cowbells, there's so much noise going on. It's kind of this euphoric feeling that almost puts you in a trance, which is one of the reasons why people tend to start out too quickly, because the excitation just takes over them. Throughout the race, I had a gel every 8K. I was using the CIS Beta Fuel, or Science in Sport, and then every 3K there was an aid station that had both water and electrolytes. I ended up drinking a cup of both at basically every aid station. Like I mentioned, I'm fairly new to racing, so there was quite a bit of spillage at some of the aid stations. Throughout the first half, I was kind of in cruise control. I was controlling my pace the way I wanted to, around 4:35 per kilometer. I kept telling myself, you're exactly where you want to be, you're exactly where you want to be, you're exactly where you want to be. And that's where I was. At the time, I was just kind of soaking in the Toronto scenery. It was by far and away the most beautiful run that I had ever been on, running down by the waterfront and then also running back into the city and seeing the CN Tower. I just have this vivid memory in my mind of that image. As I approached the half marathon mark, I knew that things were about to get real, right? The marathon doesn't really start until the second half. At this point, the crowd noise was picking back up because we're running into the city and the half marathoners are about to finish. They peeled off to the left, the marathon runners continue straight, and just like that, we lost about 3/4 of the runners that were out there. Things got quiet, there was less people, and I knew it was about to go down. And at this point, I was feeling fantastic, like arguably the best that I had ever felt throughout a half marathon. The first real bump in the road came at around kilometer 30, where I got this cramp and every single step was like this jabbing pain into my side. But I kept telling myself, just keep going, it'll go away. And after a kilometer, it did just that, but it was a really tough mental battle. At this point, there aren't a lot of runners around you. Nobody's running in groups. It's quiet. There aren't any crowds cheering you on. So it's really just you versus you, knowing that you have 12 kilometers left. But I'm still feeling pretty good at this point, and I'm trying to take it kilometer by kilometer. And kilometer 32 goes by, I'm feeling good. Kilometer 33 goes by, I'm feeling good. 34 goes by, and I'm really thinking to myself that I did a fantastic job pacing, because I'm going to empty the tank on this last 7K stretch. And then kilometer 35 hits. And this is where things go downhill. When people talk about the wall in marathons, just know it's real. It's not a joke, and it's not fun at all. I was feeling pain in my quads that is, I can't even put words to describe how bad it was. It was like every single step I was being jabbed by sharp needles over and over again. And because of this, I had to change up my running form. And because I changed up my running form, one of my hamstrings cramped up. And at this moment, I thought I pulled my hamstring. So I grabbed it and I started almost skipping until I had to stop. And at this moment, I didn't think I was finishing the race. At that point, I realized that I wasn't gonna hit my time goal. I wasn't gonna finish strong like I thought I was going to. Heck, I wasn't even sure I was gonna finish. But what I could do in that moment was just keep moving forward. And that's what I did. In that moment, I was just thinking about all of the training that I had done that got me to that point. All of the morning runs, the easy runs, the progression runs, the speed workouts, the long runs every Sunday morning where I would wake up between 5 and 6 a.m. to go out and run for 3 hours when running was the last thing that I wanted to do. I knew I had to finish. Even though I was in such a disoriented state, I knew that I had to stay focused, because if I took one wrong step, my leg could cramp up to the extreme where I would not be able to go anymore, and I would DNF at that point. And the crowd was cheering me on, and I'd walk and I'd hear cheers from the crowd about, you got this, and that just motivated me so much. At around kilometer 41, I saw my friend's family and they were cheering for me, and it was the most difficult thing that I have ever done in my life, by far. And again, this is not an exaggeration, but I crossed the finish line in 3 hours and 21 minutes. And I said to myself, I'm never fucking doing that again. hobbled over to the medal station and they gave me one of these bad boys. And in that moment, I was just proud of myself. That's it. I was just proud of myself that all of the work that I had put in over the last 4 months finally paid off. I found my parents, gave them a big hug. Delaying gratification isn't easy, but man, is it rewarding. Did I hit my time goal during this marathon? No. But this marathon wasn't about the time goal. It was about seeing what I was truly capable of. And as I mentioned earlier, we as human beings are truly capable of more than we could ever imagine. So if you want to learn something about yourself, sign up for a marathon. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna suck, but it'll be rewarding. But just remember, the marathon is no joke.